Hello, hello, good after. I'm not sure what time it is in it. It's a little early for us on this episode of the podcast. It's a little early. This taping is on Sunday, Mother's Day, so I'm getting away with this. My wife's still sleeping, so as long as we get this in and out before she gets up, then I think we'll be in. I won't be in the doghouse for the rest of the day. But I didn't want to pass up the chance, and I did ask her for her permission, so I know who's running things here. And like I said, it's a little early for me, so I've got my coffee. Usually, as you all know, it's an episode where you drinking some rum or something that effect. But it's a little early for me to start drinking. But our guest, it isn't early for him. He is over across the pond that they call it, and I want to welcome to the podcast Paul E. from Paul E. Drums. How you doing, Paul?
Well, I'm doing well, Paul. How about you? You got more than just drums in common. We've got Paul.
Yeah, that's right. This is the double. This episode is double the pleasure, double your Paul, double your fun, right?
You got it, and double the rum.
Double the yeah, that's right. It's double the drums. There's drums around here somewhere, right? Yeah, so we got it all. So this is times two, right? Maybe that should be the episode of the podcast, right? Like is that new heart show? Here's my brother Daryl and my other brother Daryl. So yeah, how you doing? How you doing, Paul? It's a like I said, Sunday morning, and you're in the UK, and I guess whereabouts are you in the UK?
Well, it's Sunday just after 1 o'clock here. So, as you said, it's Mother's Day. So, if you're letting your wife sleep in on Mother's Day, that's a very good husband thing to do. Here in the UK, I'm in Wiltshire, so I'm maybe an hour from London. Here in the UK, Mother's Day is on a different day. So it's one of those things that in South Africa, where my mother-in-law is, it's also Mother's Day. And it's actually what it would be 2 o'clock there. So as you say, it's a big world made a small world by the internet.
Yeah, you got that right. And as we were talking before the show there started, we were referencing some of the other challenges of the time zones and guests, and I think that's something very cool that we've been creating here on this podcast. Is we've had guests from all over the world, from Australia to Singapore, and all walks of life as far as the sense of drums and rums or something that I haven't had guests from Africa, South America, or Antarctica yet. So I don't know. So if anyone's listening who wants to come on or knows somebody I should interview, hit me up. What podcast I have had, according to the podcast host, a listeners from every continent, which is kind of cool in a neat kind of way. But anyway, so yeah, so it's probably easier for you to you're not in the doghouse like I am if we don't get this wrapped up here soon. So
Well, and
so
as I said, I was living in South Africa, so technically, though I'm not in Africa, I have the South Africa visa. So, we can have a half a tick of the box.
they there you go. So definitely want to give a real quick get this so I don't forget, and is a big shout out there to an alum as well, who's introduced me to you and to have you on as part of our drum and percussion manufacturer series for this month. I thought it was kind of a neat thing to talk to people, owners who are independents, smaller, it's not one of the big names that, if you open up that Sweetwater catalog or whatever, that, you're making products that obviously, Paul, again, I know I feel like a shame on me. I have never heard of you, except, and again, I want to definitely thank Mirna, who's one of your, as you call them, poly players, right, for introducing us, and actually, a few other folks that have been podcast alums too. So cheers to Mirna here. I'm cheering you with a coffee there, right? Yep. So there. Oh,
Cheers to Drumbitious Mirna.
yes. So Paul on the other side of the pond is getting to drink a little bit. Well, it's not like I can't stop, nothing stopping me from drinking. I'm just
Well, I think if on the Mother's Day, if your wife does get up after the show, it's better that you're still firing on the coffee cylinders as opposed to the spirit cylinder.
Yeah, yeah. As long as I'm making some cocktails for her, then I think she'll be okay as well too. So, but we'll have fun. It's actually a pretty nice day. It looks like here in Florida, sunny, and it's been hot lately. And so, all right. So enough about how nice my weather is. So, Paul, so want to talk to you. Okay. Again, since I'm very new to learning about you, your company, your story. This is almost could be an open book here, but how did you get into making drums? I guess how did you become a drum maker, percussion maker, etc.?
Well, actually, I had moved out to New Mexico from the East Coast, and my grandmother had recently passed away, and I had a little bit of inheritance, which as a woodworker at the time, believe it or not, I was making custom golf clubs. But I wanted to get back into my woodworking. So I bought some woodworking tools and some wood, and was ready to get started making whatever the next thing would be, furniture or whatever items it was going to be. And as it turns out, I met a guy named Steve, and he was an old, hippie guy that would make drums out of recycled wood. And he made drums that were 8-sided. Well, I have one over here that I'll show you in a little bit. And he said, "Hey, can I use your tools to make drum?" And I said, "Sure, as long as I'll make one too." And he made his out of an old recycled pallet, and I had some Purple Heart wood from Central America that I had been gifted. So I was like, "I'll make mine out of Purple Heart, and he can make his out of the pallet." So we set off and started making our drums. And a long story short, when it was done, my drum looked really beautiful. His looked well as also, but he said to me, "Wow, are you sure this is the first drum you've ever made?" And I said, "Yes." I said, "But it's woodworking, so essentially it's the first time I've done it in a drum, but it's not my first time doing woodworking." Mm. And he looked me straight in the eye and he said, "You need to be a drum maker." There it is.
So that so did you have some type of previous vocational skills that got you to that point? Was it something like through school or something to that effect?
Well, yeah, I was always good with my hands and woodworking, and my father did a lot of stonework, which runs in the family. But during high school, I was able to go to a Votech school for half the day and learn carpentry and masonry. And that was really my first bit of, training, so to speak. And I enjoyed doing the carpentry, not so much the masonry, a lot harder work. And when I got out of school, I was hopefully going to be a football/soccer player in Europe. And when I came back from that not happening, I got a job as a framer, building. And I did that for about a year, and then I started my own business with a friend of mine making decks. And we did that for several years. Then I was building houses. I was the lead carpenter for Steve Levere, a very well-known New Jersey builder. And I did that for 3 years or so, and then I decided that I wanted to move. As you know, you're in Florida, so warmth. I wanted to move somewhere warmer where I can play golf every day. And I moved down to Myrtle Beach, North Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. and got a job at Martin's Golf and Tennis, making golf clubs and being a golf club repairman, which I basically told Martin that I'd done it before because I sort of figured I could do it. And luckily I got the job, and I worked there for a good long time.
So,
but then after that, I moved to New Mexico.
So, yeah, I think that's kind of real important. And again, it's I find it fascinating. You know, obviously, when I ask guests to come on, that it's my show, I guess, if you want to call it, and I think that are kind of interesting people to talk to and hear their story. And as I said, this episode is part of the series of drum makers, people that are making things, and that's kind of why I was asking that vocational question or how you got started. It's not like you woke up one day and all of a sudden you started, woodworking, right? But something you said there, I guess I would have, in our pre-show interview, asked those questions is, again, there's already was one tidbit I wanted to ask you about one of the locations that you lived previously to where you're at. But now I've got to have to even ask even a further question because you've already opened up the door here. Okay. So where in New Jersey?
I grew up in Morris County, New Jersey, and I lived in several places in New Jersey, mostly in the north. But my cousins were from Seaside Heights, so I was used to Jersey Shore and Jersey North.
All right, so Paul, we really, other than having the same first name, we really probably do have more kindred spirits. You were ready for another layer of all the other puns that we were putting on top of it earlier? Mm-hmm. All right, so I was born in New Jersey and lived in Middlesex County.
There you go. That's the connection is there, man. The connection is there.
Yeah. So and growing up and I'm in my I guess I'm now considered my late 40s. God damn, that's getting up there. But going to school I did most of my school years in New Jersey. Finished my last one here in Florida, but again, part of that Jersey where there was more vocational opportunities or at least awareness. When I came to Florida and moved to the Daytona Beach area, I don't believe there was anything like that. And that's something like I asked the previous guest, that question about growing up, where it was something like all the kids took in high school, I think in middle school even, had to take shop class, right? So it was wood shop, and they had to, so here's girls or boys or that probably would never have an interest and never want to be, but at least they learned how to run a machine to make, carve out their name or cut, wood and so forth. So so it's, I think it's kind of an interesting thing is obviously the vocation, because a lot of these vocational jobs pay very well, and it's not that I'm downplaying college education, but I think there's something always to consider if somebody's listening to this, that there's nothing wrong with having a vocation. Computers and robots aren't going to replace plumbers. But yeah. So anyway, that's pretty cool though. So.
No, definitely.
Yep. So all right. So now that it sounds like we started in New Jersey and then ended up in New Mexico. So you said you went to New Mexico. Well, you went to Myrtle Beach and then you ended up in New Mexico. You like the warm climate. I know where you're at now. That's not necessarily always the case, right?
No, it's not. And actually, when I moved, I was living in Maryland when I moved out to New Mexico, and I was supposed to move to Phoenix. Okay. And I spent 3 days in Phoenix and realized, okay, this is too hot. Okay. So there's such a thing as being warm, and then there's such a thing as being hot. And, Phoenix was not my kettle of fish, so to speak, because your kettle of fish would be boiling. But on the way out, I had stopped in Albuquerque, New Mexico, to see some friends who I knew from Maryland. And I was just like, I'm going to go back to New Mexico. It was really cool vibe, very laid back, very Native American, really beautiful, big scenery, just a lovely place. And I lived there for 13 years.
Okay. Yeah, New Mexico. I know it probably isn't on most people's place for destination for to visit. There's a lot of cool things there. I know probably it's a pass through state on their way to Arizona or Las Vegas. But yeah, my wife grew up in New Mexico, northeast edge there, in Clovis, next to Portales, or in that area. And we visited quite a few times and over the years since we've been married. And yeah, it is as they call it the enchantment state, right? It's just the vast difference
The land of it.
yeah.
Yeah, the land of enchantments. And one of the things I like about New Mexico is, well, love, is the variety that you have. Like I was saying, if you're talking about, Clovis, it's very different than Taos, which is very different than the White Sands. So there's a large variety there in New Mexico. I mean, it's a massive state, obviously. So, coming from New Jersey, as I used to say, New Jersey's a little state with a lot of people, and New Mexico is a lot of state with a little people.
That is for sure, because it's definitely as I think that may have changed since I first went there. There was only one area code in New Mexico, I think it was, at the time, before cell phones became probably popular. But so I mean, so now you're in the UK, yeah, and then how'd you end up in the UK then? So still making drums all the way up, or percussion and woodworking and things all the way through, right?
Well, in 2009, I met my future wife through friends and an internet website that we both liked. That was a music website, and she was coming to the U.S. She wanted to have a tour, see different things in the U.S. So myself, I'm one of those few people that have been in all 50 states. So I'm like, she's going to come for 8 days. I said, okay, well, we'll start in New Mexico. I said, we'll drive out, we'll go to the Grand Canyon, because you got to see the Grand Canyon. Then we'll go to the Redwoods in California. Then we'll go up to Yosemite. Then we'll go to San Francisco. Then we'll drive down the coast to LA. And then we'll come back across to New Mexico. These were the kind of trips I'm used to taking, very long, very quick.
Sit in the funny because I find out sit in the back seat when you're a kid, right? Like National Lampoon's Vacation.
Yeah, my father, the last state that we hadn't visited was Alaska, and we're living in New Jersey. My father drove us to Alaska.
Ooh,
okay.
Wow.
I remember every first day we drove from New Jersey to Milwaukee, and this would have been in 78. So it was crazy. And then we drove through. I think we made it into Alaska at the end of the third day. So I can say the road is in my bones or in my foot. So yeah, that's something that I found comfortable doing. Whereas it turns out my wife likes to go to one place and really see it and enjoy it. But we didn't know this at the time. So I figured, selfish bachelor, it's like that. Well, this is what we're going to do, and she'll love it. And she saw more, I think, in 8 days than she has previously in any 8 days. But we found out it wasn't really her thing. But meanwhile, we started a relationship after that first trip, and she came over. I went over to the UK, and then she came over to the US, and we decided we would get married, and we drove to Vegas and got married by an Elvis impersonator.
Nice.
And then we did our honeymoon in Yosemite, because that was of the trip, the whirlwind trip that I took her on. That was her favorite place. So we went there, And this was at the time where the economy wasn't doing so good in America. I went in, I think in 2006 or seven, I probably had 50 shops selling my drums. And by the time I hit 2009, 10, most of them had gone out of business. Guitar Center put most of the mom and pops out of business. So she's like, well, where do you want to live, here or there? And I was like, well, let's go there. So that's how I ended up in the UK. And we lived in South London at the time. And we spent 6 years there. And my wife is originally from South Africa, and her parents and sister live in South Africa. Sister has two daughters that came the time was like, well, if we want to see your daughters, grow up before they grow up, this is probably a good time to do it. So we decided that we would move to South Africa, and we did.
Wow.
And we were in South Africa for 6 years, and now we've come back to the UK again. Believe it or not, it's a lovely day here today. But the nicest thing about South Africa was the weather. Where we lived in the Eastern Cape was very nice weather all year round. It never got really, really toasty hot, and it never really got freezing cold. So, I really enjoyed that. So when we moved back here in August, it was quite the reawakening to the winter times again. And especially in the UK here, winter time is very dark. I mean, it might not be as cold as some places, Minnesota or whatnot, but it's very dark, due to how high up on the globe it is.
Right.
And like right now, the sun is up, 5:30 and goes down at 8:30. But in the winter, it's the sun comes up at 8 o'clock and goes down at 3:30.
Yeah.
So it's not a very sunny during the winter time. But now that we're in summer, well, almost summer, we're reaping the benefits of long days.
Yeah. It should have. Yeah. I don't know why the movie was as it's always. I know it's always sunny in Philadelphia. Maybe it. All right. I was trying to go for a pun there, but it actually landed flat. So, yeah. So during that all that time leaving the States and going to South Africa and back and forth, you were still continuing making drums?
Actually, no. I took a little break when I came over here. I'd been making drums for probably 15 years. So I came over here, and I've been a soccer coach for most of my life, and I got a job coaching. So I sort of swung into that. I still had my friends that played my drums, that when they came to the UK, I would check them out, and people in the UK that I would get drums too. Then when I moved to South Africa, I spent most of my time fixing a house that we bought that needed a lot of work. So basically 6 years there, 6 years of working. Toward the end, I got back into making my drums. And I made a few there before I decided, coming back here, I could get back into doing what I'm doing, what people know me for, and what really I have the passion for, which was drum making. And being involved in music, friends playing my drums, it's like friends drinking your rums. It's really rewarding when other people are enjoying what you do. And, when your art makes someone else's art, that much better possibly.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. Something that if you're a creator in any sort of way, it's a good point. And definitely thank you for the tie, right? The reference saying whether you're making percussion drums or you're, craft distiller. And again, some of the episodes here the guests that have been part of it, and have, I've started kind of more realized talking through, to like, you guys is, again, there's so many similarities and I've got to probably do some type of recap on it because I think that's exactly the same thing. This is why, you know, you talk to a larger manufacturer, and it's mass produced, and maybe there's not as much. And I get it. There's a lot of money behind it and so forth. But there's also this soulness, this more personable, and again, this everyone who comes on say, hey, tell your story, connect with the people that are listening, the audience, your story and why X product and so forth. And I think that there's a lot to that where whether it's music or any art, right? That's it. It's it. And even though making maybe drums, maybe somebody may not think it as art compared to making pottery. Well, it is art because you're making something, right? There's creativity to it. So so that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, and you had Mirna on, where most of the drums where she's from would be made out of pottery.
Right.
And as far as like the art bit goes, like I tried to pride myself that I'm hand making all of my stuff and it's not mass produced. And there's nothing that I'm selling that's coming from, China or somewhere where the emphasis is on cheapness. I always try to have the emphasis be more on where I'm living at the time, and and trying to make natural stuff with the items that you get there.
Right.
So in the U.S., I have most I have some drums with me now. So I've got an American cedar. Okay. Oop, where is it? There we go. So you can't. Oh, the other way. So you can't. I can't really get the American cedar here. So I have the British cedar, and I've just found a local company here called Vasta and Lumber, and I can get now British woods here, and that's now here in the UK, I want to focus on using British woods.
Yeah, and there's obviously making rum, right? There's a tie to the barrels and so forth. So, and I think there's a interesting. So I think it's a good segue into the products, right? Some of these things that you make, and so I guess the first thing is that's something that you just showed there on the camera there. But when I was going through the website, was what kind of struck me was I said, all right, I've got to ask you about the naming of the lineup. So I think it's kind of interesting. It's obviously, as we were just talking there, reading through the descriptions and the names that some of the products you have you have a very personal tie to them and to people who have obviously impacted your life. So you talk a little bit about, I guess, some of the products and the naming and kind of how that all ties together.
Yeah. So everything. Well, first of all, I was looking for a name for my company, and friend suggested Paulie Drums. I was thinking all these different catch names and such, and and my signature is Paul E. Even though my last name is Edmonds, I always put Paul E. Since I was, able to sign my first check, so to speak. So that E goes through all of my instruments. So here I have a Bon E, and that is named for John Bonham. Okay, we all know who John Bonham is, all the drum people, the drummer for Led Zeppelin, and the E is me. So it's my tribute to John Bonham. I make drums. I have let me see. I have the Junie, which was for my father, and my father's name. My grandma used to call him Junie, so I had Junie for that. My dog Menti had a drum. It's a Menti. I've got it. I've got one of them here. I've got an Eddie, which is named after Eddie Akau, Hawaiian waterman. I've got a Marley, which is named after my dog Marley. See what else I've got. I've got a Kelly, which is now called the Kahoni. This is a Kahoni. Oh, and the original was called the Kelly, named for a friend of mine who had been murdered. So when I came up with this design, it was right at that time. So I made that the Kelly. But now that I'm back in then cajones are becoming a bigger thing. Now I've got the play on words, the Kahoni. So yeah, that's it. But yeah, all my drums really have a connection. I've also got this is my latest design. Okay, it's a handheld tambourine, and it's called, no, you can see it now, you probably can't.
Yeah,
it's called the Mani. Okay, my mother passed away in 2021 in January. And last time I was in America, my cousin says, well, you got to make a drum for your mom. Come on, you got to have a Mani. So I came up with this because my mom is not at all a drummer, but she liked to dance around and, she loved music. So for me, I thought that, I could see her dancing around playing with a tambourine and stuff. So I named that the Mommy. I made it out of purple heart wood, because my mom is always in my heart.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's and you can see my latest design is a hi-hat tambourine, and it's called the Hawkeye, and that is after Taylor Hawkins, who all of us drummers know recently passed away.
Right.
And this is a hand painted by Peanut Butter Custom. So it's very, very different than most of my drums, which are a stave design. Okay, so it's all pieces glued together. The Hawkeye is actually like a plywood wrap drum.
Okay.
So I make those. Actually, I've got one here. So it'd probably be better to look at because you can see that it's actually a wood shell.
Right.
That I have cut down to 2 inches and put my jingles on.
Right. So Paul, how long does some of those does it take to make, and like say from a start to finish, because obviously there's that woodworking part to those drums there. I mean, attaching the jingle and is obviously not as the difficult part, I would assume, but it's obviously whether it's the gluing and the forming and so forth. I mean, what's typically, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So like the things I'm doing mostly now are these. So these are like a one part, right? So I cut 8 pieces of wood, connected on a to try to make it look like it is a rounded out drum. But something like that, you cut the wood, then you do a glue, and that's the first day of the process. Then the second day, after a complete 24 hours at least, so everything's dry, you do your rough shaping. And another thing, all my drums have wooden heads. Okay. So after I've done my shaping, then I attach the wooden head to it.
Okay.
And that's another day. Then once that is dry, I do my finish sanding of it, which is another day, and then the oiling. So most of the drums with these, which since they're only one connection, uh, they're probably about a 4-day process if I worked every day.
Okay. And most of them are pretty much custom.
Well, what I do is I have my design. So my design is, I will always work off of if somebody wants something a little smaller, a little bigger, a little wider, a little louder, a little, however they want. But when I stock a shop, for instance, they're going to have the Bonnie will be an exact 6-inch top, 2 inches side, with 8 jingles on it. So I do customize where if somebody says, "Oh, I want it a little bigger," or "I want it a little bit smaller." So like Mirna has one of these, which is called a mini, which essentially is half of a Bonnie. Okay. So I came up with this one because people wanted something smaller and something where you can get in at your hi-hat with. And this way you can get in at your hi-hat. I can put it on I've got my hi-hat on here. I don't want to really mess my phone up too much, but so it sits on the thing. And while I got my phone up, I will just say, here's one of the first designs I made with the string on it and the cow head.
Okay.
And this is an eddy. So you can see there's different sections to it.
Right, yeah.
So that kind of drum would take at least 2 more days in the process. Okay, make sure I can get back on.
There you
go. Spot. Okay, there we go. So 2 days extra into that process.
So yeah, so for the listeners on the podcast, you definitely have to check out the video format as well, to see what Paul was talking about and some of those designs that he had and so forth. So the one that you just showed, that very first one, the djembe with that cow head hide, you don't make them anymore, do you? It's all pretty much wood heads, right?
Yeah, I don't make the hide heads anymore, and there's a good story to that. When I started making my drums, I was doing a lot of art shows, and I had friends in Phoenix, and I went out to Phoenix to do an art show, and I went into the show and signed up, came out 10 minutes later, went to unload my drums, and pretty much all of the heads had gone because it was so hot. So I'm basically showing drums at this really high-end art show that were for the most part broken. I took some of the heads off, and I had people say, "Oh, I could use that for an end table," and actually believe I sold a couple of my bigger drums as end tables. But yeah, that was when I was like, you know what, I need to come up with another way to top my drums for my heads. So that's when I did a redesign. The original ones were sort of an hourglass, almost an exact hourglass design. And then I decided I liked to do djembes, because the djembe is a very such a well-known drum and such a perfect design. Right. You have your big area where you create your sound, and then it shoots it out the bottom. So I started making the djembes, and I started with wooden heads, where I was using solid wood, trying to get the heads to work, and it really wasn't working. So then I was like, I need to use like a plywood, a Baltic birch plywood, a really strong plywood, much like the head of a cajon,
right?
Where they have the 1/4 inch on one side, and then the 1/8 inch with the loose corners. And I came up with that. It must have been 1998, and I have not skinned a drum since. Um, I don't know if you've ever skinned a drum, a djembe, when you have cord as opposed to hardware on it.
What I would lug,
But it
right? The
is a
lugs, right?
very, yeah, it's very difficult, tedious, hard on your hands. I know you had your hand operation, and that was one of the things. I was like, my carpal tunnel is killing me from doing, skinning. I'd make 8 drums and then you'd have to skin them, and it's hard work.
Well,
So
I would say PETA is probably really happy with you that you're not using any animal skins on your drums for sure. But yeah, we had back in March a taiko drummer here in South Florida, and really cool, and learn a lot about their type of drum styles. And her husband run a taiko academy and do tours and performances, and they were talking about some of that stuff. It's not like anybody makes, it's not like, again, drums that are as certain type of world drums. It's not like you can get everything here in the U.S. And he makes a lot of their drums that they have, and they take old wine or beer, some type of barrel, spirits barrel, and then they
a
skin it.
task, yeah.
Yeah, so it's an episode of, check it out, with Mirna, taiko drumming and so forth. That was so he said he had to do another. He had to change the skin on the head on one of them, and I told him, I said, well, I'd love to come down there and help him, or learn it, because I think that's a whole fascinating, even more into the conversation there, other than just the playing it, but obviously the making it and all those parts to go into it. So yeah, that's just so everything is then on. Oops. Everything's on the. It's all played with the hands or sticks. I'm assuming, because I've seen a couple of the designs there that are played with a pedal, that it's obviously durable enough to that it's can probably play both, right?
Yeah, definitely. You can pedal drive the heads. Like I was showing you with my hi-hat here. You know, Obviously, as you said, some people are just on the podcast, but let me see if I can get it out here so you can see what's going on. There we go. So, these are the accessories that I'm starting to do now more. I started my first Bonnie I made a long time ago for Terry Bozzio. And now the older that I get, I like to stick with the smaller things. The kit accessories gets me into drum kits, where most of my other stuff, hand percussion wise, wasn't really getting me into people's kits.
Right.
But now I'm into kits, but with my Bonnie series and the Hawkey. But I've also do my hand tambourine, the mommy that I showed you, and of course my cajon, which is a handheld design, where just like a regular cajon, it has
right an individual
that
head.
slaplet.
Right.
Yeah, it's got the wooden head, but it also has that little lip on it, where 2/3 of the head is glued and 1/3 is not. So it gives you that nice whack, that nice sound that you associate with a cajon, not just the snare sound, but the corner sounds. So yeah, now I'm focusing on those designs. I also do a stomp box, which you stomp on or you tap. So yeah, I'm trying to focus now. The older I get, I need to be able to do things that I can produce without killing my hands. And these little drums, the hi-hat accessories, they really work out nicely. They're
Right.
fun to make. They're not such so hard to make on the body. And even the same with my Cajon. It's a comfortable size to work. Once you start working these a bigger djembe, like the Eddie that I showed for those that
Right.
had the video. I mean, trying to work something like that when you're holding it, it's you need to wear a back brace just to hold the thing.
Yeah, I guess that's the difference between holding a full thing of wood, very dense compared to maybe some of the ones that are not made of wood or fiberglass, or even some type of head that's not made of wood. Um, so yeah, you said Terry Bozzio. That's a pretty significant name there. I think even maybe some of the non-drummers who are listening is so. How did again? You said you started out back in the '90s, and one of our other guests who was talking about we're talking about cajones, where most people that were not into world percussion had no idea, other than drum kit, maybe congos, bongos, maybe steel drums. That's pretty much about it, for the average non-drummer player, or ones that were not exposed into other things. But yeah, how did some of these products, I mean, again, you've got a pretty extensive list there of poly players, right? Um, everything from, as you mentioned, Terry Bozzio, Gregg Bissonette, right? There's a big guy. I think I'm going to see him in June because I think he's still performing with Ringo. So I'm going to be seeing Ringo in that show here in Fort Lauderdale in a couple months. And Jim Donovan, another alum, he was on the podcast last year. So it's quite a few. Listen, we kind of knew each other, but yet we didn't know each other right through all these. As we mentioned, Mirna and also Akira, who was also another recent guest that we had on too. So yeah, I mean, so some of those players, I mean, obviously interesting. How you cross paths, I guess, with some of those like Greg and Terry and so forth.
Yeah. So like Terry, I met Terry through my friend Thomas Mitchell, who was at Luccheti's Music, and he was doing a clinic. This is in New Mexico. And Terry came, and at the time I was doing bongos that were 1/8 inch and 1/4 inch heads. So would give you the different tonalities. And I said to him, hey, could I give Terry a drum? Terry, for anyone who doesn't know Terry, he was played with Frank Zappa for many years in the 70s, and then was in Missing Persons. And nowadays he is what we call a solo drummer, where he plays pieces of music such orchestrated on his drum kit. So he has a huge drum kit that is almost set up like a piano. So it has every note that he needs. It is available to him. It's a massive kit. So I gave him that first one. He did another clinic in Albuquerque, and I gave him an Eddie. So the Eddie that I showed is Eddie number 1, and Terry got Eddie number 2. And at that time, he was making his original monster kit. So anyone who does know Terry, the kit that I was explaining is, 40 some odd drums, all made by DW, and Sabian cymbals. And in his original monster kit, he had one Pauly djembe, that Eddie, and also a Mooney, which is named after Keith Moon, which is a tambourine. And he had those pedal driven in his original kit. So his original DW kit actually had 2 Pauly drums in it, and everything else was DW.
Wow.
So that was I still remember the day my friend came to me with the Drummer magazine, and he's like, look, Terry's got your drum in his kit. And I was just, like, oh my, I was blown away by that. And yeah, so I met Terry that way. And again, like these are guys that endorse me freely by, I give them instruments. They like what I do. I don't pay them to promote me or anything like that. They just basically, they like what I do. They don't mind me saying that, Pauly players, basically anyone that has a Pauly drum is playing a Pauly, is a Pauly player. Gregg Bissonette, which you mentioned, I met him at another clinic, and I gave him bongos. Then when I went out to NAMS the 1 year, I met him again, and I gave him one of the first Bonnies, as well as Terry at that time. So they have some of the original Bonnies, and Terry to this day uses his kit in his mini kit. I haven't been in touch with Gregg in some time, but as you said, he does play with Ringo. Believe it or not, he's Ringo Starr's drummer. I mean, imagine that. That's the aspiration of every drummer. Who do you drum for? Ringo Starr.
No pressure of all the that are out there, right? And you're drumming, you're backing the guy who got it. That's probably one of those. And I know he's influenced like a lot of people, right? Obviously, the Beatles were a huge impact of in every type of kid that was watching the why am I drawing a blank? The Tonight Show. No, not the Tonight Show. Why am I drawing a blank?
Not Johnny Carson, Ed Sullivan.
Ed Sullivan. Ed McMahon kept coming to mind. I was close.
You had the Ed right.
Yeah, Ed Sullivan's show. And, again, whether it was somebody was influenced by Paul McCartney or somebody was influenced by whatever, have it be. But yeah, to say, hey, I'm drumming this, I'm backing the guy who got me into drumming, right? And that's just got to be so mind blowing. That, I mean, I'm sure at that point they're equals and they're peers, etc. But yeah, anytime you meet your idol and then, and so forth. But yeah, that's pretty cool. So maybe, yeah, hey, I just throwing it out there. If you've got anyone who that you can throw my name, I'd love to have him on the podcast. I have anybody on there. So but yeah, I'm looking forward to that show because I hear it. Get the Ringo Starr All Star Tribute Band is a real all star show.
Yeah, I saw the Ringo tribute the first year in New Jersey. I mean, that's how long ago it was. I was still living in New Jersey, I believe, at the time. And Lee Von Helm was the drummer. So, it's gone through a variety of changes. The Ringo All-Star Band, if you don't know, Ringo gets different artists, and it's not the same band every time. So, talking to Gregg, the Gregg story about getting into Ringo's band was all these other guys have songs, that they, whether it's Joe Walsh, Lee Von Helm, Todd Rundgren, these are all guys that have played in the All-Star Band. They all have songs, and their thing is that Ringo likes to play their songs, and you each do their song. And Gregg's like, but I don't have a song. I played in David Lee Roth's band and such, but I don't really have a song. So I think eventually Ringo was like, well, he's such a great drummer that, we're going to overlook that he has not got a pop single, and we're going to have Gregg be the drummer in the band. And he's been the drummer for a long time.
Right. And
not just getting to back Ringo, but imagine that you're sitting up there with two kits and you're exchanging chops with Ringo. I mean, I'm sure for Gregg, that must be one of the coolest things going.
Yeah. I'm sure that first time, even though he's toured all over the world, and like you said, with David Lee Roth and that's a show in itself, right? And to perform in that. So, and yeah, you mentioned there another name. I just totally forgot one of the names there. You just had
Well, you mentioned Jim Donovan. Is right. That Jim got a drum from me in the same way. My friend Scott Swimmer, who is a charity organizer, Drumstrong is his company. They his charity, and they raise money for children with cancer, getting musical instruments to them and such. And he gave one to Jim, and Jim really enjoyed it. And he reached out to me, and I believe I sent him another couple things. The reason I'm here with you, because you didn't know my drums, was Mirna. who is anyone doesn't know her, she's Drumbitious Mirna on Instagram, and she's a fabulously talented drummer and any person. I mean, science and marketing. She's got a lot of oars in the water, so to speak. And she's a poly player as well, and so is Kira.
Yep.
So you mentioned her as well. She's a London-based drummer that does a lot of lessons as well as playing. Forgive me, Kira, I forget the name of her band that she plays in. But we are going to be sponsoring the Hit Like a Girl competition, which again, Small World Mirna got me involved in that. And I am going to be donating drums to the winners. And we're also going to be, with Kira, we're going to be giving lessons to young girls that would not otherwise be able to afford them.
That's really cool. That's awesome that the community can help others that may not have the opportunities, but yet they have the abilities, but just not the opportunity to maybe pursue and so forth. And one of our alums from last year, Angelina Bucata, she is one of the finalists in the 13 to 17-year-old category. So I know it's a Drums and Rums podcast, but I had her on here. She's a South Florida drummer as well, and it was and again there was no alcohol involved in that episode. So, but she's got some new things going on too with a new band that she just joined, a 3-piece. So, but yeah, so I mean, it's kind of again this kind of cool little world of people sharing and connecting and and helping each other out and picking up the phone and whatnot. So that's really cool, Paul. That supporting that. I think that contest is really cool, and quite a few other alums have been involved with currently as a judge is like Sheila Klotz and Dorothea and Kelly Ray Tubbs, and so a lot of great women that are in the drumming world here that people should check out if you don't know who they are. So very cool. So yeah, you were also talking about just recently you were at the UK drum show. So how was that? And then now that we're post COVID, kind of, right?
Yeah, well, again, I think it depends where you're at. Here in the UK, most people are vaccinated, so now they're what they call living with COVID. So, it's the UK drum show had been canceled like everything else. The 2020, 2021 was canceled. So 2022, they had the drum show in Liverpool, and it's sort of like a miniature NAMM. Okay, so it's not quite as big a thing as NAMM, but there was 60 or 70 drum makers, from little guys like me to Pearl to DW to Sabian, all exhibiting. And now it was a big hall, and most people, well, I guess I didn't catch COVID, and I can say knock on wood, I so far haven't. But it's in the UK here. It's very different now. I just went to a weekend festival called Desert Fest in London, which is in 5 different, everything from small pubs to bigger venues, not arenas, but 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,000 people at the most venues. And knock on wood again, I did not get COVID. I returned unscathed. So yeah, I think it's a very different thing here to other countries. When I was in the US the last time, I went to see Los Lobos because they're also friends and poly players. and I went to Philadelphia Winery, and you basically sat at your own table with people with your mask on, unless you were eating and you needed obviously to take your mask off to eat and to have drinks. So over here now, I think it's to the point where most people have had COVID, most people are vaccinated, so it's not as extreme, so to speak.
So the turnout,
most people, if you get it now, you're out of commission for a week or so, and then you're back.
Right.
You're back at it.
Right. So the turnout at the drum show was pretty good then.
Yeah, the turnout was pretty good. I mean, for me, it was my first time there, so I only went with what the organizers said, and they felt very happy with the turnout. I thought it was a good turnout, for a drum show. Again, anyone who's been to NAMM knows what a madhouse that can be, and this was more of a mini madhouse, so to speak. Things were a little more controlled. You didn't get tired walking from one side of the hall to the other side of the hall. You could see and experience everything. They also had drum clinics and stuff going on, and in the day you could see everything and experience it. The entire, see people give clinics that you wanted to and perform. Check out every booth that was there, which, I mean, I've been to NAMM, and as a drum maker, not even gotten to see, maybe the keyboards part of the NAMM show, because I'm spending so much time in the drum area, which again is absolutely massive.
Right. So that's one of the things that's great that we, getting a little bit past that, and things are opening back up, and especially like you said, back in the mid 2000s, we went through the recession, or the economy, the collapse in the economy back. I know, at least in the U.S., but again, it was globally too, right?
Yep.
And how that was impacting, especially like you said, for a smaller company, how it's very reliant upon these things, and then these little shifts and changes. And that's something definitely over the last 2 years of doing this podcast. I didn't start the podcast because I was bored at home because of COVID. I had to stay home. I had just started just prior to the lockdown started happening here, and episode 3 was walked right into the first set of on Zoom podcasts, which I wasn't really ready to start wanting to do that just yet. And again, as we were talking before, episode number 4, I believe it was, so with two drummers, in 2 different countries all at the same time, and it was, and it even at that point was just interesting talking to them. Again, we're talking probably April 2020, talking to 2 other people somewhere else in the world, and what they're going through with COVID, right? So that's why I always tell people, I'm not getting into political and and all these conspiracy things, but if there is somebody controlling things, they're controlling it all over the globe, not just here in the U.S.
That's true. And again, I mean, like I said, I was living in South Africa at the time, where they had prohibition for 6 months.
Ooh.
Okay, so not only were you not allowed to leave your house, but there was no alcohol being sold or cigarettes. That everything is a bit different. And then, of course, the first vaccination.
And Paul,
they sold on the black market.
And Paul, there's no way that would have happened here in the U.S. Let's take smoking and drinking from away from Americans for, we'll say, 6 months, and then that would have been definitely. I think actually they increased the alcohol consumption because people sat at home, and but like to your point is talking to one of our guests who's based in one of the islands in the Bahamas. Same thing. They were locked down, and people knew that he was making rum at his place, and then he kind of sneaking over in the middle of the night, knocking on his door for.
Well, in South Africa, their reasoning, as they said, was to try to keep people from gathering, illegally. But if you know South Africa, the government, what would then happen was now the black market comes and you can still get your beer and your cigarettes, but it's through the black market. So you're spending, 2 or 3 times as much money. And even though the government makes money from taxing booze, that comes in through the government, where when you're dealing with the black market, they're just putting a nice little cash deposit in your offshore bank account, and you're getting to keep all your money.
Yep.
So, you talk about conspiracy theories, but again, in America is a very drinking society, and the tax revenue that is made from it is massive, and the government would never stop such a thing. But in South Africa, they get their money, however they can. And as I say, they need to know where that money goes when it's coming from taxes, but when it's coming from the black market, it just sort of shows up in their bank account or their back pocket, and no one knows anything about it.
Don't ask, don't tell. So
no.
So we can go. I wanted to jump back because I forgot to ask about one of your poly players there, who's not typically considered a drummer or percussionist per se. The percussionist maybe we probably could say is, but Micheal Frantee. So I think you talk about his product there, or the product that you made for him, or what he's using, because I've got a lot of friends here that are local here in South Florida that are guitar singer-songwriter soloists, and they so they usually are doing some type of trying to add some percussion to their lineup, whether they're looping or beatboxing or whatever. But yeah, let's hear a little bit about what his setup. Even though again he's not a drummer, but still. So here's okay. So there we go.
This is the original. For those of you that are on a video, this is the original Frantee. Okay, so Manis Atene is the drummer in Micheal Frantee, and he is a poly player. And I was bringing him an Eddie, a big djembe, in Colorado. And I showed up before the show, and he's like, come on in and, check sound check out and stuff. And I sat there, and then Micheal Frantee saw the drum. And he's like, wow, can you make me a stomp box? And, a stomp box, basically, he would stomp it and it would keep the beat. Okay, so it would almost be, like a metronome. So sort of playing to a click track before they were, well, maybe not before they were click tracks, but not when everybody wasn't using a click track. Okay, so he would stomp this, at the beat, the click beat. And the one that he had at the time was basically like masonite and duct tape. And I was just like, oh, of course I can, Micheal. Sure, no problem. And I really had no idea what the heck to do. So I talked to his sound man, Micheal Frantee, who's a good buddy of mine still. And I came up with this big, now what is called the Frantee, and this is the original. This one has been stomped in front of millions of people, and it eventually broke. It's on the top there.
Yep.
So I needed to get him another one, and what I got him, I'll go and grab it in a minute. What I made him then was a bit smaller and easier to microphone. For the PA. But then he eventually got a digital one. I forget what company, but someone out of Australia. So then he had a digital one, which, my friend who was the sound man, Mike, he was like, it's so much easier. We just plug it in and, boom, boom, and we're set up. Where my original one that I was just showing there, it had a Shure SM57 in it. So it was quite, depending on the venue, depending on the sound system, depending on so many things, took a little bit more time to dial in. So Yeah, I mean, that's my connection with Micheal. I've known Micheal for many years. I've seen, I don't know, I wouldn't say maybe hundreds of shows, but dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of them. Um, and yeah, so for a singer songwriter who's playing by themselves, also, that can give you that bass beat. If you're sitting there playing your guitar, you have your boom, boom, boom,
Right.
boom, or whatever you stop at. It's basically an amplified, click track,
Right.
um, and it's being created acoustically. So that's my connection with Micheal. And again, he used that box. Oh boy, it must have been for 4 or 5 years before it finally broke. No, maybe it was 3 years. And anyway, he would have played all over the world with it.
Wow.
And then when he sent it back to me to fix, and I said, "Well, I can't fix. I'm going to send you some." I sent him 2 other ones, and I kept that one. so I literally have had that hanging on my wall. It's one of my prized possessions in my drum arsenal, and it doesn't even work.
That's a pretty cool story. And again, it's actually, yeah. So if there's any Micheal Frantee fanatics, right, it's definitely probably priceless to them, right? It's because it's actually been played. So, you know, yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. Like I said, I've seen a lot of soloists here in South Florida where it's um I got a friend, also friend of the podcast. There is he does he's got a full setup of using a combination of electronic kit and pedals to play, and he's got a trigger on his guitar. He's doing a lot with his feet and just playing the guitar and singing, and so he kind of produces a full band sound from just all of that, and full drums, but he's playing the drums but with his feet and hitting triggers with sticks and pedals, and to others that are doing, like I said, beatboxing and looping, and as well as too, there's a Celtic kind of band, and that the Killbillies, and they play standing up, and they've got like foot drums with like whether it's a snare or a bass drum kind of thing, playing like kind of very similar, where a pedal kind of keeping time, and but I think for those that are soloists who are looking for uh, to add a little percussion to a little bit more sound to their thing, they definitely should check that out. So, but very cool. So,
Well, you mentioned looping, and that's something that's gotten really big. And I have a bunch of friends that loop. So this is the newest size of
okay.
stomp box. Okay, and this is the Marley, and it has your jack that you plug into,
Ah.
and you tap on it. So if you're someone who's looping, you can do, what, boom, 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 and then hit your loop, and then that boom, 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 boom carries out throughout your looping sequence.
Right.
So I've been selling a good amount. Well, I've been selling those to people that do the looping bit.
Yep.
As you said, it used to be that a solo guy would try to do all these things at one time, and it must be absolutely nearly impossible. But now with the looping bits, you can get that little bit more, you can focus on. So say you're a guitarist by trade, right? You can do a little percussion to start your loop going, a basic lick on the guitar, and as those are looping around, then you can improvise and do lead, or vocals as well. You can lay down several backing tracks, and then
Right.
you can vocalize over that in the lead.
Yeah, we're here in South Florida, and just even the portion of South Florida I live in is the amount of this, again, because it's outside, it's beautiful. Like today, you're playing a little bar, people went outside enjoying the music, and And that's why sometimes I'm like, damn, I wish I learned to play guitar and sing, because I definitely could have a lot more options here, than so forth. But I'm gonna, let a couple of good friends of mine that are here, so definitely, if Chris Springer, if you're listening, check this out. And Chris is a soloist. He does beatboxing and looping also for that, to produce a percussive sound. And as a soloist, and Brad Brock also, he's also the guy I was talking about, who plays a full kit with pedals. But definitely something, yeah. I mean, check it out, and I'll pass that along to them to, definitely, if they're not familiar with it, definitely check it out, because as you mentioned, it's great that it's also got a mic jack to plug in, and no messing with holding the microphone at the right angle and all that kind of stuff. So pretty cool. So, all right, so we're coming to kind of getting ready to start landing this episode here. And before we get to our rapid fire segment there, so we're going to talk a little bit about that there up on the screen there, and then while you're, let me switch it over there. All right, so then we're going to talk a little bit about that, and then before we do, though, Paul, so you've got a YouTube show. Is this something it's kind of new that you've been doing? This is We Go to 11, and obviously, awesome Spinal Tap reference, right?
Yep, 100% or 11%.
Yeah, there you go.
110%. Sorry,
111. 111. Yeah.
Yeah. So it has to do with being 11 questions. So I have a poly player, usually the poly player of the month. They come on and we do an episode of We Go to 11. Poly players, one of our mottos is We Go to 11. So it's a series of questions where I ask them 9 questions that I have previously decided. Then we take the 10th question is from a follower, right? Because I do it on Instagram and I do it as a live story. And then the 11th question is now is a question that they ask me. So it's had this little evolution to what it is now, but yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's good to get people to know more about you other than just your drums, how you got into things, who you like, all those kind of fun things that, what kind of drink you like there, what's your spirit, right. So to speak. So yeah, I have a lot of fun with that. And this month I will be doing it with Tom Fife, who is a London drummer, plays in Stub and the Brothers Keg. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. I started doing it again. It was a lockdown type thing where, I'm living in South Africa. I'm unable to travel. And, this way I got to talk to people and they got to say, their bits and stuff. And the followers got to ask a question, which, everyone on social media likes to, if they're involved, that makes it that much more social, so to speak.
Yeah. And I think, like, yeah, very similar is, as I mentioned, I think when people learn a little bit more about a person and make a personal connection, I think that can go a long way. And as opposed to just here's who I am and here's what I show, or especially if you have a product or something that you've created, like we talked about, some type of art that there's a tie, like I said, the story. That's why I asked you about the naming of the drums. And again, because obviously there's a personal connection to those things. So very, very cool. So,
yeah.
All right.
And the artists, most of the artists, when you get to talk to them, they always, if you're friends with any of these artists, when you go to a show, they want to talk about, what's your family doing? How's this, that going? They don't want to talk about their music. You go and see, you go see Micheal Frantee, and, how you doing? How's the wife? How's your dog? How's his sons? These are the things that most of they want to talk about. They don't want, most of them, unless they're egomaniacs, they don't want to be like, oh, you're great. This was great. Oh, this song is great. They really want to have that one-on-one connection. Terry, Bozzio is the same way. Great guy. Every time I see him, we talk family. Louie Perez from Los Lobos. I hadn't seen him in 10 years, and I just saw him, and the first thing we started talking about is our family. Because that's the connection beyond the music, right? The music is there, but that personal connection where you interact with somebody, it's a massive bit of why a lot of these people make their music, is so then they don't want to be focused on just the music, but they want to be a friendship, an actual friendship.
Yeah, and I've Toby Tyler, the episode I had taped with who's one drop distilling and rum in the Bahamas, had talked the story. He's a musician as well, a guitarist, and how in the Bahamas, that particular island in the Bahamas, where he said a lot of celebrities come in, it's a kind of when they're trying to get on vacation and so forth. And he says, Mick Jagger comes in, and it's like, don't, the put off is you start geeking, fanboying over over the musician, and like just talk to whatever he wants to talk, like he's a normal person. Oh, okay, oh, he's into wine. Wine is a big one. So if you obviously start talking about wine, then he'll be like his best friend. And he talked about a night where Ronnie Woods had come into the bar he was playing at with his band. Ronnie Woods walks in, comes up to the stage, and it's like, all right, I'm playing guitar with one of the guys from the Rolling Stones, so it's kind of cool. But again, it's like you try to be kind of cool, be normal, right? And then but sometimes I know it's hard to kind of say. Again, we were talking about Terry Bow, Gregg Bissonette. I've been playing with Ringo, so. But all right, so you're going to definitely need. I don't know if you need to have a little bit more of that little sip on that beverage there, and we'll talk about it. I'll ask you, but before we get into a rapid fire there, so what do you got there? What do you get you're drinking while it's noon for you, but it's afternoon for me there?
And so one of the big things over here in the UK is ciders. Apple. You also do pear as well, but apple cider is one of the big things. This is a Henry Weston, and Weston's family has been making, I think, since 18. Oh boy, I can't even remember. Anyway, this is his organic, and it's a 6.0, so it's got a bit of kick to it, but it's really nice. It's something that I enjoy drinking over here. I do enjoy my rums. I do enjoy my tequilas, my spirits as well, and my beers and my ales and my stouts. And we'll just say that all within limits, of course. But having a nice cider is really one of the nice things about it. It's like going to Ireland and having a Guinness from the factory.
Right.
Going to the Bahamas and having a local rum. That's it's a good thing.
Yep, and that's probably the most freshest Budweiser I've ever had was when I did the tour in St. Louis, and then we're obviously at the Anheuser-Busch distillery. And again, the whole born on date stuff that they were pushing, I said, wow, this was so crisp, so fresh. Again, it came right there from the motherland, right? Of all Budweisers is nothing more than the plant in St. Louis there, and but yeah, I have a little bit different. They don't really consider themselves a cider. Obviously there's or hard seltzers. Or it's a hard. They don't really consider themselves a hard seltzer, but it's a 7.5%. It's a rum-based cocktail in a can. It's referred to as a pina colada and a blue Hawaii. They got a couple other more here, but they're in South Florida there. So it's it's rum. Like I said, it's rum based. It's not a hard seltzer, but yet it probably would if you had to put it in a category of beer. But they just differentiate themselves as a cocktail in a can. So yeah, you have a couple of those that'll definitely tune to get there. So, but again, it's still a little early. But you know what, though, Paul, I am going to break into, as you mentioned, some of these locals. So this was a This is a little hard to label there. Ouroboros. This is a very craft company here in South Florida. We had them on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and so I'll go ahead and I'll enjoy. Again, I'll have a little sip while I'm putting you through some torture there. And again, I don't want to get too much there, but they are. Want to give a shout out to Jeff and Samantha on the podcast, the alums there. So there you go. I'll put that right in front of the camera so folks can see there, or something like that.
Like they say, drink responsibly.
That's right. Right. So, all right. So, Paul, are you ready for the rapid fire segment here?
I'm as ready as I'm going to be.
All right. So I know you did a little homework. You watched a couple of the past episodes there to get prepared to see what this is all about, what I'm all about. And all right. So let's get into the segment here.
In 4 beats or less.
All right. So I know we're a little bit kind of squished on the screen there, but we'll lead into the next one here. So we're going to go through and I'll ask you these questions. Okay, and then we'll go into next here. So, all right. So first one up, again, if you listen to the podcast, watch the videos, most drummers are going to get the drummers. This first question has become the staple now for drummers. And in 4 beats or less, who is on? I can get to it. Who is on your Mount Rushmore drummers?
Oh.
I know it's tough because you've got probably quite a few Paul Lee players that you don't want to put out. It's a tough one. But
all right. So I've missed my four beats, but I'll say Bozzio, Bonham, Bissonette, and
you got another B,
Buddy Rich.
Oh, there you go. They got 4 Bs. I'll give it to you, right? 4 Bs. There you go. Okay. Yeah. So I know you did the pre-show stuff, kind of some a little bit about you. And Terry, I think, is a name that I haven't heard as much from the drummers. Again, he's been around forever. Like you said, Frank Zappa, and I remember him back in, when I was in my teens. The big hair, crazy hair. I mean, well, Gregg Bissonette, he had big crazy hair as well too. So, but I think, all right. So in the next one here, so let's get this.
Gregg only got the crazy hair once he joined
David Lee Roth.
David Lee Roth. But then again, we all had some crazy hair back in the 80s.
That's true.
It was a sign of the times. Now I barely have any hair.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, all right. So number 2. So in 4 beats or less. Okay. So this is one that I've asked a other guest who is from New Mexico also. She is a New York Times bestseller, Dorinda Jones. And we asked her this question because she was from New Mexico. So since you had spent time in New Mexico, in 4 beats or less, green or red? And I think you know what the reference is.
Oh, yeah. I've got to go with the green.
All right. Okay. All right.
But I do like red.
All right. Yeah, there you go. So yes, for those that you're listening to that question there, and if you didn't listen to the one with Dorinda Jones, we asked the question of green or red, and it has referred to Hatch chili. So it's definitely a big thing there. It's known all over. Hatch, New Mexico is obviously where they all the bases and so forth. So again, unique things about New Mexico that most people don't know about, and then realize, oh yeah, I know that, or I've heard of that. So yes, and my story about eating at a McDonald's in New Mexico that had actually Hatch chili peppers on the cheeseburger, and I'm like, this is the bomb, right? So,
and here's an irony: I actually live on Hatch Road.
Oh, that's funny.
Right now, I'm currently living on Hatch Road in the UK.
That's funny. So, all right. So number 3. So in 4 beats or less, what's your, as we were talking about the series as manufacturers, percussion makers, and so forth, what's your most important tool in the workshop?
My mind.
Okay.
Without the creativity of my mind, then everything is just a tool. Yeah. So I would definitely have to say my mind, we all have our saws, our sanders, our this and that, but we come up with our different items because of our mind and, our mentality, so to speak. And, where are we thinking? Where are we coming from? Where are we trying to get to? So I would definitely say, and as you've seen my stuff, no one really does exactly what I do. People make hi-hat tambourines, people make cajones, but most, people make djembes. But my stuff is very, very unique and very Paul-y. So I say, without a doubt, it's my influence is my, I use the same tools as everyone else, and this, I'm sure the same goes for them, whether it's a big company, a small company, or a drum maker. I'm sorry, a drum. See, it's Drums and Rums, a rum maker.
Right.
Your own taste, your own influences. That's what's going to make your rum special.
Yep. Yeah. No, that's a great answer. Definitely wasn't what I was thinking, but it definitely makes sense. Definitely makes sense for sure.
Good.
All right. So the last one here. So in 4 beats or less. Stuck on an island. Stuck on the island. All right. I'm not sure which island that may be. I mean, I guess technically you are on an island, but anyway, stuck on an island. What's the one?
That's not the UK.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Stuck on an island. What's the one song?
Okay, so for me, I have to say, my favorite song is "The Great Gig in the Sky" by Pink Floyd, which is Claire Torrey basically crooning over an acoustic piece. It's on the dark side of the moon, and it's the kind of thing where I could loop it over and over and over. And I really, as I say, if I get to choose the song I listen to it when I'm dying, it would be that. I want that song playing in my head when I'm taking my last breath.
All right. Well, hopefully that's still many, many more years down the road there, but since now that we have made it through the podcast here, let me go up and change it to our side by side view when we're squished in here. So all right, so there, cheers. All right, we made it through.
And cheers to you, Paul.
Yes, thank you, Paul. All right. And now
in the UK, we would call you Robbo.
Well, that's right. Well, it is right, Robertson. So I think if you've listened to the podcast, and I know that most listeners already know because I talk about it pretty frequent, is I'm a first generation American. Both my parents came over to Scotland in the 60s, mid to late 60s. So so I've yet to visit, so which is kind of sad, but I don't know. Anyway, so
go in the summertime.
Yeah, I unfortunately
in the summertime it is, it's really nice. The weather's nice. You'll have sun for 18 hours of the day, and I would strongly suggest going. It's really beautiful country.
Yeah, I have family there, and I've just got to I get off the pot and go do it though. Fortunately, Florida is hurricane season during the summertime. So, all right, so Paul, welcome to the alum. You've made it there. So, oops, scratching down there. So there's your Drums and Rums. You've made it there. I'll send that out to you. So we'll make theirs, or where the tagline, where the backbeats meets the spirits. I know it's a little hard to see, but there you go. Welcome to the alum now. So we'll get that out to you shortly there. So yes. So yeah,
Paul, it's been my pleasure. I just learned about you from Mirna, and I've watched a bit of your casts. It's all very interesting. I think you do a great show, a good bit with the mix of the drums and the rums, drums and spirits, music and spirits. So yeah, it's been my pleasure, and it's been great talking to you, and getting to learn a little bit about you and the connections that we have that we didn't know about.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's like we said. So I'm definitely looking forward to when the episode drops here. This will be episode number 98. So that'll be dropping 2 2 weeks from this coming Tuesday, whichever day that is. But yeah, no, look forward to, and again, Paul, it was great that, again, these connections that, we're making, and reaching to that person. And again, too, if there's any drummers that you see that I've had on who's maybe, interesting to you, to your show that you're doing, definitely, yeah, let me know, and I can always make the connection. That's the least part of this whole cool family, like I said, that we've got going on here. So for sure. So
great.
Yeah, so this is, again, as we wrap up the episode, I want to thank Paul for coming on to the podcast here and talk about drum making. Again, his product, his companies, a lot of great story, a lot of, history and things you've gone through, to, some big names that are playing your instrument, your gear, which is always, as you said, it's kind of mind-blowing, as you said, seeing it in the magazine there for Terry Bozzio's kit. And so definitely check out Paulie Drums. Well, no, that's not. I'm tapping a rum bottle here now. Check out Paulie Drums. We'll post in the show notes the links to everything that he's got, to the company, and there's some stuff on YouTube. To the show, in the show we go to 11 and so forth. And check out Club Tiki there. Again, they are affiliate of ours. So check out clubtikico.com. Use the promo code Drums and Rums. Free shipping on 2 4-packs or more, and you get a little discount. And again, I get a little bit of a thing that kind of helps me with our show here too. So definitely check it out. And Paul, like I said, I really appreciate coming on here. I know I'm probably getting close to my time that I'm allotted here. It's Mother's Day. Definitely, I know. I don't think we planned it this way, but it just kind of was. I appreciate sharing that story there with it being Mother's Day and with your mom. And that symbol, or the new product, the Mom E, and so yeah, that's a really nice looking. I like that wood. So
yeah, Paul. I mean, here's to my mom, to your mom, to everyone who's watching's mom, and of course your wife for letting you do this on Mother's Day. Cheers to her.
Yep. Cheers. Yes. Cheers. Again to the moms out there. Again, I know you're all will probably be listening to it here soon, and it won't be Mother's Day when you're listening to this. But anyway, so we at least attempt it. So I again appreciate it, Paul.
You can still think about your mother when you're listening to this, because every day is Mother's Day.
There you go.
It's just like Earth Day. Every day.
There you go. I like that. That's a good way to end it. So again, thank you, Paul, for coming on. Have a great Sunday. And this is Paul, where the backbeats meets the spirits. Cheers, y'all.